Hi, I'm Daniel Little, and I'm here with Round Sky Solutions, and we are doing a little video series on how to help mission-driven leaders get traction with their lives and their work. Last week, Cecile and I released the Seven Conversations Toolkit, where Cecile was talking about how to sort organizational conversations into seven different categories so that we can really understand what we're talking about and get the kind of outputs from those conversations that we need. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for your interest and your engagement with the work. It was great to get some feedback on the last video we did. And one of the questions was, how do we learn more about the kind of the tools that you're offering and really put them into practice? And so today I'm going to be talking about the four zones of leadership development and how you as an individual can get traction in your own life, in your own work. And we'll also be announcing a new course that we're launching. We'll be sending that out soon, as well as a third video that we're producing right now, and that's all coming soon. The the key challenge that we see is that there is a super complex environment that people are working in. We have really complicated technology. We have really complicated lives. We have our organizational relationships to manage, and the key thing that we hope that people can get from these videos is a new view that can encompass and like take in all these challenges and make sense of them, and to provide new tools so that we can get through these challenges, so we can get traction, so we're not kind of spinning our wheels in the complexity of life and our work, but really make some movement. So, for example, Cecile and I just got back from a weekend away with family, and a lovely weekend, but we got back on Monday morning, and we were pretty much completely overwhelmed with the amount of complexity and details of even like getting this video filming project together. There was just a lot of moving parts, and we were facing some of the same challenges that we're trying to teach people how to address. And so one of the cool things was just being able to use some of the tools that we had to make sense of the challenges that we were facing and process a half a dozen really complex aspects to this project and come up with clear outputs from that really quickly. In 30 minutes, we were on our way, aligned with each other, aligned with ourselves, and back into action. So one of the things that Cecile and I learned in this search for new tools and better ways of working together is that we need a much bigger picture. We need a much bigger view of our situation in order to be able to encompass the challenges and the difficulties that we face. And so that's why we want to bring these new lenses or new ways of seeing and the tools that go with them to help us all be so much more effective at the change-making work that we want to do. So this lens is the four zones of leadership development, and it's based on a set of distinctions from the philosopher Ken Wilber. It's being used around the world and applied to all different kinds of fields, from international development to psychology. It's really helping make sense of some of the kind of confusions out there in the world. Essentially, Wilber noticed that when we go about our life, we're using this particular set of four different ways of looking at the world, four different perspectives on our life and on our experience. In humans, at least, we can say that we have both an interior and an exterior perspective on the world, and that's the first distinction that we're making. There's a difference between our inner subjective experience and our objective kind of exterior experience. We can see an example of that if you think about if we examine the process of thinking, for instance. On the interior, we each have our own subjective experience of our thoughts. We notice them in our minds and we see what they are or the visions of them. And that's our own subjective experience. That we have that experience. That's something that we have. However, we can also kind of look at our thinking process from another angle. We can look at it from the exterior. We could go to the hospital and get a brain scan, and we could see the changes in blood flow based on the type of thinking that we were doing, and that would be an objective or exterior way of seeing our thought process. The cool thing is that both of these views are real and true. They're just different views of the same situation. The other distinction is that we have individual and collective aspects to ourselves. We can see that in many ways we each are unique, autonomous, beings that have our own will and our own volition. And yet at the same time, we can see that we're completely enmeshed in and related to everything around us. We are part of a larger community, or we are connected to the food we eat or to the environment we live in. So there's a collective aspect to our existence as well. So if we take these two sets of distinctions and we kind of put them at cross angles to each other, we end up with these four zones, these four quadrants or four zones that describe the different ways that we see the world and that we can interact with the world, and these different areas that we can learn and grow within. These zones can be applied to lots of things, but if we apply them to leadership, we might call them the self-leadership zone, the operational leadership zone, the systemic leadership zone, and the relational leadership zone. In the self-leadership zone, we're working with all of the ways that we have our own subjective experience of ourselves. It's a place where we learn about our thoughts and our emotions and our worldviews and our own capacity to grow within ourselves. Some of the capacities that we work on here are things like emotional intelligence, or understanding our own developmental process, or working with our own motivations or our own worldview. Some of the key practices for this area are classic things like meditation or self-inquiry, as well as more learning about ourselves through processes like taking a personality inventory, like the MBTI or the Enneagram. So working in this area helps us to really know ourselves and to understand our own capacities and our own strengths. And it's vital for our work as leaders and just as team members to be able to bring the fullness of our own inner life to bear on the situation, to understand why we have these emotional reactions or how we're thinking in the way that we're doing. Transforms our relationships and our experience of working with other people. So the zone of operational leadership is where we really get to action. It's about taking the next steps. It's about doing the work that needs to be done. It's about our relationship with our own physical selves, our health and our diet, as well as our relationship with the kind of tangible things that need to be done in the world. Some of the capacities we can build here are managing and understanding our own energy states, or having a healthy diet, sleep, exercise patterns, or really learning how to execute on the tasks that we have to take care of in our work. Practices to develop ourselves here could include physical exercise, tuning up our diet, and learning how to really execute on the tasks that are in front of us, or conversely, learning how to pause and take a breath. The great advantage of having a high degree of capacity in operational leadership is that things get done. We can really learn to manage our own energy and our own resources and our own actions to be very effective at the world-changing, concrete tasks in front of us. Next is the relational leadership zone. It's the place where we're connected to our communities on large and small scales. It's our relationships with other people that we're learning how to be more effective and skillful within. Some of the capacities here include really listening deeply to each other, or to being more authentic in our own communication. It's about working out our agreements and our shared understandings within our work groups or within our communities. Practices here include active listening and nonviolent communication. They include collective visioning, or generating our shared organizational agreements. So building our capacity in relational leadership allows us to really collaborate with our teammates to create the kinds of shared agreements and common understandings that are really necessary for doing our work together. So finally we come to the zone of systemic leadership, and systems leadership is where we can interact with and really engage with all the systems in the world around us. We've got financial systems, to ecosystems, to systems of project planning or task management at work. These things are vitally important for us to understand and be able to work with. Some of the capacities that we can build in this area are things like learning how to really step back and see the big picture, to be able to strategically prioritize amongst all of our competing commitments, and to set up technology to work on our own behalf, or to automate and systematize a particular process at work. All of these things can help us be more skillful in this systems arena. Some of the practices that we can take on to develop ourselves here are things like mind mapping the interrelationships in a project or a network, or taking time to study something and see it from a larger picture before diving into the details. And the great advantage of being able to work with systems is that if you work with the systems don't have to work on you quite as much. There's a way that we're so connected to the world around us and so impacted by all of these things. If we can take the systems into our own hands, we can use them to skillfully leverage all of our effort to the betterment of the work that we're trying to accomplish. So those are the 4 zones of leadership development. And the thing about working with these zones is that they're all necessary. They're all really important. And none of them can be completely overlooked without damaging the health of the others. And we each have strengths in some of these areas and not so much in others. For instance, I'm sure we all know someone who's really good at relationships with other people and is just very engaged and inquisitive with others. And we might say that they have a high degree of relational leadership. On the other hand, they may be really terrible at just getting things done and getting to action and taking care of their immediate tasks, in which case we'd say they'd be weaker in their operational leadership capacity. So the key when working with our leadership capacities is to really understand where we're strong and where our strengths are, so that we can really leverage our strengths and do great work based on the things that we're good at, as well as to understand our weaknesses and either be able to tune those up and develop our capacities there, or find other people on our team who do have those capacities so we can synergize and create great work together. So we all have these differences inside ourselves or between each other, and it's really easy to get polarized and have these differences in opposition to each other instead of actually working together to make change effective. We can see these polarizations at work when we see folks who have a preference for their interior development as a way of making change in the world. There's that Gandhi quote, be the change that you want to see in the world. And that holds a real truth. We need to upgrade our hearts and our minds and our interiors in order for change to take hold and be for real in the world. But there's a mistake if we focus too exclusively on this self-leadership capacity, because we might tend to forget that we need to go out and make tangible, physical change in the world too. We might need to get out and put the solar panel on the roof and not just have a better understanding of life in our own hearts. Conversely, we can see that same dynamic in the other direction. I'm sure we all know people who are really excellent at operational leadership, and they go out and they make that change. They put up that solar panel, they build that permaculture garden, and they really make change visible in the rocks and the soil of the earth in so many ways that are needed. And the danger if focusing too exclusively on that approach is that we're going to run into times when we just don't understand why people won't take up our projects, why they won't tear out their lawn and put in an edible landscape, because they don't want to. Well, they don't want to. That's an interior element. How do we help people learn and grow on their interiors as well, so that they can find the motivation, they can find the self-awareness and the self-reflection to get through the obstacles that we're going to face in our efforts. Both of these approaches are deeply needed in order for change to be sustainable. By seeing the importance of all 4 of these areas, we can really begin to harmonize our efforts and honor the truth and the strength of each of these approaches. We can also build our own strengths in a multifaceted way that really honors the complexity of the world we live in and the work that we're trying to do. The first step is really to understand how these 4 zones are operating in ourselves and in the people around us. We've provided a link to our leadership assessment down below, which just takes a few minutes to answer and will give you an indication of where some of your strengths and your weaknesses are, and gives the chance to reflect on how you can build your capacity and leverage your strengths as you go forward. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this new way of seeing our life and leadership capacities. I hope you will go take 10 minutes and fill out the assessment. The link is below, and see what you can learn about your own capacities to build your traction for your mission. Please also make comments and questions in the comments area below. I'll be reading those and responding to them personally, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're discovering. Thank you again, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really wish you well in all of your efforts, and let's go make a difference.